Settle in for this one. Turn the lamp down low, let your shoulders come down away from your ears, and let me tell you about a man named Dale and the smallest, heaviest secret a person can carry. Dale was 58 years old, and he could build you a house from the ground up with nothing but the picture in his head. Give him a set of plans and a crew and a patch of red Tennessee clay, and in a season, he would give you a home. He had framed half the new streets on the north side of Chattanooga. He knew to the day when the concrete would cure. He could stand in an empty lot, squint at the tree line, and price the whole job in his head down to the dollar. Men twice his size called him boss, and meant it. There was almost nothing Dale could not do with his two hands. There was one thing. Dale could not read. Not really. Not the way you are reading or hearing these words right now. He knew his letters the way you know a song in a language you never learned, the shape of it familiar, and the meaning just out of reach. He could sign his name. He could pick out a stop sign by its color and its shape, an exit by the number he had memorized. But a paragraph, a page, a bedtime book with a sleepy bear on the cover, that was a locked door. And Dale had spent 50 years pretending he had simply left the key at home. He was good at pretending. That was the thing almost nobody understood about a man who cannot read. It is not laziness, and it is not a lack of smarts. It is a full-time job, a second career built entirely out of covering. And Dale had gotten so good at it that he could go months without anyone catching on. At a diner, he never read the menu. He would hand it back and say, "Warm as anything, just bring me whatever you'd order, sweetheart." And half the time, the waitress thought he was flirting, when really, he was drowning. At the lumberyard, he had the counter kid read the order back to him, joking that his eyes weren't what they used to be. On the job, he memorized. He would have somebody read the plans aloud once, early, and then it was all in his head, every measurement, every corner, filed away where it could not embarrass him. For years, he had a partner in the covering, and her name was Carol. Carol was his wife, and Carol read the world to him for 31 years. She read the mail at the kitchen table with her coffee. She read the church bulletin and the instructions on the medicine, and the birthday cards from the grandkids. She filled out every form, signed every school slip, and never once, in 31 years, made him feel like less of a man for it. It was just how they worked. He fixed what broke, and she read what came. And between the two of them, they had a whole life. Then, 3 years before this story really starts, Carol got sick in the fall and was gone by the spring, and the reading fell to Dale. That is a grief nobody warns you about, the second grief hiding inside the first. He lost his wife, and then, slowly, in the quiet weeks after, he discovered he had also lost the only person who stood between him and a world made entirely of words. The sympathy cards came, and he could not read them. The paperwork came, stacks of it, the kind that arrives when someone dies, and he sat at the kitchen table with all of it, and could not make it speak. His daughter Jenna helped, of course. She was 30 years old, and she had her own family, and her own long days. And Dale would rather have chewed nails than let her see how much he needed her to. So he started a new set of tricks. "I can't find my reading glasses, honey. Would you look at this one for me? My eyes get tired at night. This print is so small. Who makes it this small?" And Jenna, who loved him and had no reason to suspect a thing, read him his own mail and never guessed that the glasses did not exist. There was a flyer in all of that. It came home in a stack from the county library. A plain thing, blue letters on white paper. Jenna had picked it up at a book sale and used it as a bookmark and left it on his counter. And one morning, Dale held it in his rough hands and understood, from the little symbol of an open book and a phone number he could dial, roughly what it was. A class. A number you could call if you were a grown man who had never learned to read. He did not call it. He folded it once and then again into a small, tight square, and he put it in the console of his truck, under the napkins and the tire gauge, and he told himself he would call when things settled down. Things did not settle down. 2 years went by, and the flyer rode around Chattanooga in the dark of that console, folded and quiet. And every so often his hand would brush it, reaching for a napkin, and he would feel a small, hot flush of shame and push it back down. Now here is where the whole thing turns, and it turns on something very small. Jenna had a daughter named Ellie. Ellie was 6 years old that year, all knees and questions and a gap where her front tooth used to be. And she thought her papa hung the moon. When she stayed over, which was most Friday nights, she followed Dale around the yard while he worked, handing him tools he did not need, narrating her entire day in one long, breathless sentence. He would have laid down in traffic for that child. One Friday night, late, with the crickets going and the porch light on, Ellie padded into the living room in her pajamas, carrying a book. It was a library book, a picture book about a bear who could not fall asleep, and she climbed straight up into Dale's lap the way she had 1,000 times, and pushed it into his hands and said, "Read it to me, Papa." And Dale, who had lifted beams over his head and worked through 2 cracked ribs without a word, felt his whole chest go cold. He looked down at the cover, at the sleepy bear, and the letters underneath it that would not hold still and mean anything. And for a second, he could not breathe. He could have called Jenna in from the kitchen. He could have sounded out a word or two and faked the rest, which is what he usually did, badly, guessing from the pictures, hoping the kid was too little to notice. But Ellie was not too little anymore. Ellie was learning her own letters now, pointing at signs, spelling her name in wobbly crayon, and one day soon, maybe that very night, she was going to notice that the words her papa said did not match the words on the page. So he did the thing he had done his whole life. He covered. He kissed the top of her head and he said, "Oh, honey, Papa's just too tired tonight. My eyes are wore out. Go on and have your mama read it." Ellie's face did a small thing then, a little fall, not a tantrum, just a quiet disappointment. And she slid down off his lap and carried her book down the hall to her mother. And Dale sat alone in his chair with the television off and the crickets loud, and understood that he had just lied to the one person on earth he would never want to lie to. He did not sleep that night. He lay in the bed that still felt too big without Carol in it, and he thought about the years. He thought about all the things his hands had built, whole houses full of families reading bedtime books to their kids. And he thought about how there was one house he had never been able to build, the small, quiet one, where a grandfather reads a bear to sleep. He thought, I am 58 years old. And then he thought a second thing, the thing that changes lives, quiet and stubborn in the dark. He thought, I am not too old. Sometime after 2 in the morning, he got up. He went out to the driveway in his undershirt and his boots with no socks, and he opened the console of his truck, and he dug under the napkins and the tire gauge, and he took out the little folded square of paper that had been riding around in the dark for 2 years. He carried it inside. He sat at the kitchen table, Carol's table, and he unfolded it under the light. Careful, the way you unfold something that might tear, and he smoothed it flat with the side of his hand. He could not read most of it, but he could read the number. Numbers he had always been able to hold. And when the sun came up, he sat with his coffee and his phone, and he looked at that number for a long, long time. And then, before he could talk himself back out of it, he dialed. A woman answered. "The Library Learning Center," she said. "This is Pearl. How can I help you?" And Dale opened his mouth and nothing came out, because he had never in his life said the words out loud. Not to anyone, not even to Carol, who had simply always known. He gripped the phone. And Pearl, who had answered that line for 11 years, and had heard that exact silence more times than she could count, said gently, "Take your time, honey. We're in no hurry here. Are you calling about learning to read?" And Dale, 58 years old, a man who had built half the north side of a city, put his forehead down on his own kitchen table and said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." Here is a thing worth knowing, in case you were lying there in the dark carrying some locked door of your own. The hardest part was already over. The hardest part is never the learning. The hardest part is the phone call, the saying of it out loud, the letting one other person know. Dale had just done the hardest thing he would do in this entire story. And he did it, before breakfast, in his undershirt, with his coffee going cold. They matched him with a tutor. Her name was Sophia, and she was 19 years old, a sophomore at the community college who volunteered on Tuesday evenings because a teacher had once done the same for her father. Dale nearly walked out the first night when he saw how young she was. He was old enough to be her grandfather, and here he was, about to show a teenager that he could not do the thing every child in her life had learned before the age of 8. His pride stood up in him like a wall. But Sophia did a small and enormous thing. She did not talk to him like he was slow, and she did not talk to him like he was a project. She shook his hand, firm, the way you shake a man's hand, and she said, "So I hear you build houses." "My apartment's got a door that won't shut right. Maybe you can tell me how to fix it, and I'll tell you how these letters work, and we'll call it even." And just like that, the wall came down about a foot. They met in a little room at the back of the library on Tuesday nights, a room with soft carpet and a round table and a lamp that gave off warm yellow light. It smelled like old paper and floor cleaner, and faintly, the coffee from the machine down the hall. It became, over that first winter, the safest room Dale had ever been in, safer even than a job site, because in that room, he did not have to pretend to be anything. They started with sounds. Not baby stuff. Sophia was careful about that. She never once put a children's book in front of him. She used index cards and a builder's language, because she had figured out fast that Dale's mind was a blueprint mind. "This letter is a load-bearing wall," she would say. "It holds the same sound every time. You can trust it. This one over here is a cheat. It changes depending on who it's standing next to." She built him a house out of the alphabet, wall by wall, and Dale, who had never in his life failed to understand a structure, began, slowly, to understand. The first word he read, all the way, no guessing, no pictures, was the word truck. He sat there in the warm lamplight and he sounded it out. T-R-U-C-K, truck. And then he said it again like he did not trust it. Truck. And Sophia grinned at him and said, "That's yours now. Nobody can take that one back." Dale drove home that night and read every sign on the road he could catch in his headlights, out loud, alone in the cab. And he had to pull over once because his eyes had gone blurry and it was not safe to drive like that. Some nights were hard. Some nights the letters swam and refused to hold, and Dale would get that old hot feeling in his neck, the shame that had guarded this door for 50 years, and he would want to stand up and say, "Never mind, this was a foolish idea. I am too old." And Sophia, 19 years old, would just wait. She would slide the card back and say, "This one's stubborn, huh? Let's frame it a different way." And she would never, not once, let him feel small. That was the whole thing. That was the medicine. Somebody in the world knew his heaviest secret, and instead of shrinking him, she stood beside him and picked up a hammer. He did not tell his family, not at first. On Tuesday nights, he told Jenna he had a men's group at the church, and technically, he told himself it was not a lie, because there was coffee, and there was fellowship, and there was a girl teaching him to read the Word that meant the machine he drove to get there. But mostly, he kept it secret because he wanted to be sure. He had spent his whole life not being able to do this. He needed to know he could before he let anyone watch him try. Winter turned to spring, and the words came. Not all at once. That is not how it works. But the way the light comes back in February. A little more each week until one day you notice the evening is not dark anymore. Dale read a street sign and did not have to remember it. He just read it. He read the label on his own medicine and understood, for the first time, exactly what it was and what it was for. He read a text from Jenna, the whole thing, the first message from his own daughter he had ever read with his own eyes, instead of asking a robot voice to say it for him. And he sat in his truck in the grocery store parking lot and read it 4 times. In all that spring, in secret, he was working on one thing in particular. He had gone to the library on his own, without Sophia, walking up to the desk with his heart going like a jackhammer. And he had asked Pearl to help him find it. The book about the bear who could not fall asleep. He checked it out on his own card, and every night, alone, in the 2-big bed, Dale practiced. He read that bear to sleep 100 times, to nobody, until he knew every word. And then, because knowing it by heart was just the old trick in a nicer coat, he made himself read it slow, with his finger under the words, until he was not remembering it. He was reading it. Now, I told you there would be no villain in this story, and there isn't one, because the thing Dale was fighting was never a person. It was a door, and he had spent 50 years believing it was locked from the outside, and it turned out the key had been in his own pocket the whole time. He had just needed one 19-year-old with a stack of index cards to help him find it. It was a Friday night in April when he was ready. Ellie stayed over, same as always, and same as always she came padding down the hall in her pajamas near bedtime, and she had a book, though not the same one. And she stopped a few feet from his chair, like she half expected another no. And Dale set down the remote and patted his knee and said, "Come here, baby girl. Bring me that. Let's read it together." Ellie's whole face opened up. She climbed into his lap, all knees and elbows, and she settled in against his chest, and Dale opened the book. His hands were not shaking now. He put his big, rough finger under the first word, the way Sophia had taught him, and he read. Slow, careful, sounding out the hard ones, missing one and going back and getting it. He read his granddaughter a whole book, every word in his own voice. And when he finished, she looked up at him and said, "You're a good reader, Papa." And Dale had to look at the ceiling for a second before he could answer her. Down the hall, Jenna stood in the kitchen doorway with a dish towel in her hands, and she had heard all of it. And she was crying without a sound, because she had grown up in that house, and she had never once, in 30 years, heard her father read a single page out loud, and she had never known why. And now, all at once, standing in the doorway, she understood everything. Every forgotten pair of glasses. Every, "This print is so small." Every, "Honey, would you look at this one for me?" She understood the whole shape of her father's life in the space of one bedtime story. And she never let on that she knew, because some gifts you receive by pretending you didn't notice them being given. Let me tell you what happened next, because with a story like this, the best part is always what happened next. Dale kept going to Sophia on Tuesday nights, long after he could read a bedtime book, because it turned out he liked it, and because the two of them had become genuine friends, the old foreman and the young student. And he did, in fact, fix that door in her apartment, and the leaky faucet, too. And he taught her how to check the oil in her little car, so nobody at a shop could ever talk down to her. Fair is fair, he said. She taught him letters. He taught her not to get cheated. Even, just like they agreed. A couple of winters later, when Ellie was in the 3rd grade, her school held a Grandparents' Day, the kind where the older folks come in and sit in the little chairs that are too small for them, and the children show off what they are learning. Ellie's teacher asked if any of the grandparents would like to read a page to the class, and a lot of hands did not go up. Because reading out loud in front of a room is a scary thing at any age. But one big weathered hand went up in the back, slow and certain, and Dale walked to the front of that classroom, and he sat in a chair built for an 8-year-old, and his granddaughter beamed at him from the rug, and he opened the book they handed him, and his hands were shaking again, but only a little, and only because it mattered so much. And Dale read to a room full of 3rd graders, out loud, every word. And not one of those children had the first idea that the man reading to them had learned how, the year before, he turned 60. They just thought he had a nice deep voice and read the scary parts good. Ellie thought her papa could do anything. And by then, she was right. There is one more piece, and then I will let you drift off. For 20 years, Dale's company had wanted to make him a superintendent, the man who runs the whole site. And twice they had offered it to him outright. And twice Dale had turned it down with a joke about how he liked his boots in the dirt. The truth, the real truth he never said, was that a superintendent has to read. Blueprints all day, contracts, safety reports, long emails, the whole job floating in words. He had said no to protect his secret, and it had cost him a title and a raise and a quieter, cleaner kind of work he would have been good at. The spring after the Grandparents' Day, they offered it a 3rd time. And Dale, 60 years old now, sat across the desk from the man who ran the company. And he did not make a joke. He said, "I'll take it. Just give me a week to get up to speed on the reports." and he took the folder home, the thick one full of words, and he sat at Carol's kitchen table under the light, and he read it. All of it. Slow, with his finger under the lines when he needed to. And then he went in on Monday, and he ran that site like he had been born to it. Because in every way that mattered, he had. He kept the flyer. The little blue and white one that rode in the dark of his truck console for 2 years, folded into a hard, tight square. He unfolded it all the way and he smoothed it flat, and Jenna put it in a plain frame, and it hangs now in the hallway of Dale's house, between a picture of Carol and a crayon drawing of a bear, where a man who could not read for 58 years can walk past it every single day and read every word. So if you were lying there tonight with a locked door of your own, some small, heavy thing you have carried so long you have stopped believing it can be set down, I want you to remember Dale, in his undershirt at 2 a.m, dialing a number he had been afraid of for 2 years. The hardest part is not the learning. It is never the learning. The hardest part is letting one other person know. And you are not too old. You are, I promise you, not too old. Rest now. Let your hands go loose, the ones that have built and carried and covered for you all this time. Somewhere a grandfather is reading a bear to sleep, slow, with his finger under the words, in a voice that took 50 years to find. Let that be the last thing you picture. I'll see you in the next one. Before you go, if this one reached you, do a small kind thing for me. Tell me in the comments who taught you something when you were sure it was too late, or who you'd like to teach something to before it is. And if you have ever carried a secret like Dale's, or loved someone who did, I would be honored to hear it. Drop your state and how old you are, so I know who is out there listening in the dark tonight. Sleep well. You did good today, just by being here.